Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NFL edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, and we're going to go over the Week 11 main slate at DraftKings. Already have a Thursday Night Football video up for tonight. This video is being shot on Thursday, and also have an NBA single game showdown slate video as well. So if you want to bet or play either of those slates, go ahead and check those videos out on our channel, the DFS Build, and hopefully we can help you out. Obviously, the hope is to help you out for the main slate too. A lot of games and lots of plays to like. If we do help you out in any ways, please like this video and also consider subscribing to the channel so you get alerted to more videos just like this. The way we break down the main slate is we go position by position, looking at ownership projections and matchups to see how we want to approach the slate. So Taylor, let's start at quarterback. Leading the way is Lamar Jackson with a 22-point fantasy projection, and the other two guys joining him with over 20 fantasy points projected at the position are Brock Purdy and Josh Allen. I mean, I know who I want to play of that trio, but I want to get your thoughts first.
Yeah, it's the weekly thing where we say we want to play a lot of Brock Purdy because he's cheap, and the matchups against Seattle, and he's a ton of weapons that like that now. Played close to a full allotment of snaps last week. Should be, good to go even more this week. I will be playing a lot of McCaffrey along with everyone else. But that's not going to stop me from playing Purdy along with it. I think, there's enough pass catching volume with him to where the stack makes sense. Normally you consider the quarterback maybe a little bit negatively correlated with the running back, but not in this scenario. The matchup good. I'm not really paying up for Allen or Lamar. Largely going a lot cheaper at QB this week, as scary as it is to fade Lamar. But yeah, it's kind of the way it's going this week.
I mean, Lamar and Josh Allen do not have friendly matchups. The Steelers and the Chiefs are good defensive teams. Those games probably project, more to go under their game totals. So obviously Lamar can explode and Josh Allen can explode. They are matchup proof for sure. But if you're paying almost $8K for your quarterback, they better get you like 30 fantasy points. And I don't know if that's a very good bet this week. Brock Purdy just is the best value at the position. 6.6K. Why is he still only 6.6K? 20 plus fantasy points in each of the last 4 games, 24 plus in 3 of 4. So getting McCaffrey back only helps him. The thing with McCaffrey is he had 16 fantasy points last week on 20 opportunities. 16 fantasy points without even scoring a touchdown is pretty great. So probably going to see McCaffrey score a touchdown this week, but I agree it does not impact Purdy's, the correlation is positive in my opinion, just because a lot of McCaffrey's production is going to be catching passes too. So Purdy looks great. 49ers stacks through the air look awesome across the board. If you don't want to eat the chalk, because right now he's coming at 7.7%, but that is going to get inflated. He's going to be above 10% on this slate. If you don't want to eat the Purdy chalk, I think there are a lot of good options in that similar price range. Are there any that you like in particular?
Not really around him. He's kind of on an island. Like you have Mahomes for 6,800, but he's like the only guy who's kind of similarly priced. I think Mahomes is okay, but certainly not a guy I'm prioritizing. That game obviously has shootout potential just because of who the quarterbacks are and who the playmakers are in that game, but I'm kind of taking an under approach on that. I don't think that game's going to be like super chalky or anything, but yeah, I'm either going cheaper than Purdy or like cheaper than Purdy.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking it's still above the 6K range. I think Bo Nix and Jared Goff look really, really good. If you want to drop down just slightly by $300 or $400, they both look awesome. They are coming
as well.
Yeah. I mean, they're coming in with top 5 projections. They're both coming with 19-point fantasy projections. Nix is going to be slightly chalkier as things stand. I don't have a problem with that. But I mean, Goff against the Jaguars, as long as the Jaguars don't do what they did last week, which out of nowhere shut down the Vikings, that made no sense. So I don't know if we have to be worried about that, but Goff and Nix look awesome. How about going even cheaper? If we want to find somebody under 6K, dare we play with the ghost of Aaron Rodgers at 5.5K?
Yeah, as of now, my 2 favorite quarterbacks are both 5.5K. Aaron Rodgers and Jameis Winston. It's kind of the way this slate looks to me. I'm a pretty big Rodgers detractor at this point. He's looked really bad. He looked maybe his worst last week against Arizona in a good spot in a dome. This week they're at home against the Colts. The Colts are not a good defense. Rodgers is cheap. His weapons are good. His weapons are more expensive. So the natural stacking partner being cheap and not super popular looks pretty good to me. My favorite QB is Jameis, though. Same price, going into the Dome to play New Orleans. Stacking weapons are cheap as well. And Njoku, Jamar, Seth Tillman might be kind of popular. So Winston does have some ownership as of now. I don't expect him to be contrarian necessarily, but I think it's a great spot. We've seen the upside from him on occasion. It is what it is. I think Winston, Rodgers, and Purdy are my three kind of quarterback flag plants this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting Rodgers against you in our Dynasty League matchup this week, so he's not doing dick. He's going to be terrible. I don't have a choice. I have to start him. So I don't know if anybody wants to just understand how bad my luck has been in Dynasty. Maybe don't use Aaron Rodgers in DFS this week. That said, Aaron Rodgers historically is so bad going out west. I don't know what the deal is, considering he is from the West Coast. But traveling from Wisconsin to like California or to Seattle, and now it's New York to these areas like Arizona. For whatever reason, when he goes out west, he's not nearly as good as he normally is. Now, let's consider one thing about Aaron Rodgers. He was awful last week, undeniably. He looked completely washed. But the week before, he looked awesome in the second half. So I don't think it's impossible for Rodgers to bounce back here in a must-win game. The Colts are a pretty good matchup. His offense remains stacked in theory, and he's only 5.5K. So I have to play him in Dynasty, so I'm probably not going to play him in DFS just for that reason alone. Anytime I play somebody in my my home Dynasty league here, it doesn't work out with DFS purposes. Anyways, there are really good pivots away from Rodgers if you don't want to eat that chalk, though, if he does end up being high owned. Right now, he's coming at like 5 to 6%.
I don't think he'll be high owned. I think people
it doesn't seem like he will be.
Actively do want to play now.
But if you don't want to play him and you want somebody cheap, I think a couple options are Drake May at 5.6K. Decent matchup against the Rams. He has rushing upside. Believe me, I don't want to put any trust in the Patriots offense either, but he has a ceiling just because he can run. And the other one would be Anthony Richardson at 5.3K. He got the starting job back. The Jets defense has not been scary at all. Kyler Murray went off against them last week. So if we are to believe Rodgers is washed and the Jets just are done, Anthony Richardson would be very, very interesting in tournaments at 5.3K.
Yeah, they're okay. They're not guys I'm really getting to, Richardson or May, but I see why you would. I think someone on my radar is Russell Wilson, 5,900. I think it looks increasingly likely that his first season in Denver was kind of an anomaly, and he's just still good, like he was in Seattle for a decade. He's looked outstanding since he's been starting for Pittsburgh. The matchup with the Ravens is good. Like the Ravens defense has been horrible this season, especially against the pass. We saw Joe Burrow completely annihilate them last week for the second time this season. Wilson has decent weapons as well. George Pickens being the headliner, Mike Williams. They're now take a guy like that. Freiermuth, I guess, is okay. Calvin Austin, decent cheapie. I think Wilson's a pretty good play for less than 6K, and then Tua at 6K against the Raiders, I think, is always playable as well.
Tua is the next guy after your boy Jameis Winston with a projection of 18 fantasy points. The Raiders are a good matchup. Don't forget, Joe Burrow hung 5 touchdowns through the air against the Raiders. The Raiders are just kind of done at this point. They're looking towards like Shedeur Sanders or something in the draft. I don't know, but I like the Tua call at 6K flat. I have a lot of interest in Devon Achane as well. I don't know if I'm going to want like a full exposure to that offense across the board, but it could, it's either the running game or the passing game most likely, and Tua at that price is worth a look for sure. I think my flag plant will be the chalky Purdy. I think it's just too obvious. I don't really want to get cute at quarterback, but I do think there's some interesting values for sure. Rodgers, Anthony Richardson, probably the two that stand out the most to me. And I think I have a lean towards Richardson just because I'm starting to not trust Rodgers anymore. All right. So at running back, we have, again, a major chalk with Alvin Kamara. He busted last week. It was only 15 fantasy points. I said last week that if it's going to be that much ownership to one guy when there are really good pivots up top, I don't want to do that. Kind of the same again this week. The matchup with the Browns is not good. He technically has a really big role, but unless he's punching in touchdowns, that role is not necessarily quite as concrete for DFS purposes as you might want to think it is. So McCaffrey's also going to be a little bit owned, but he is a direct pivot off of Kamara. I would much rather go with McCaffrey at basically the same price, basically the same projection, slightly less ownership, and in a better spot. To almost 20 touches. He had 19 true touches last week. So not concerned about the workload. He did not score a touchdown, which is unlike him. I fully expect him to score at least once this week. I mean, McCaffrey to me is the best running back play of the slate.
Yeah, I think I'm going to play them both together a lot. Playing down at quarterback with a cheap stack like Cleveland or Denver, something like that, can help you pay up for both of the AK running backs. Kamara would have been fine last week if he had caught his easy touchdown pass at the end of the game that he dropped in space with nobody around him. So, sometimes those are the breaks. I'm not going to be scared away by one bad game. 2 weeks ago, we saw him smash without a touchdown as well. So the upside's still there,
True.
even if he doesn't score. And Cleveland, it's a dome game. If I'm stacking the Browns, Kamara's going to be the very, very obvious run back on the New Orleans side. I like that quite a bit. McCaffrey's cheap. Like, he might be 10K at some point. He's been 10K before, and this week he's 8-3 against a Seahawks defense that is not – it's better than it was last year, but it's still not very imposing. I'm just going to happily take the discount we're getting on him right now. Given the workload we saw last week, I feel pretty comfortable with it. I think pairing them is perfectly fine, and that's something I'll do a lot. If I drop down, like, you can play Kyron Williams, you can play Breece Hall, you can play Devon Achane. There's a lot to like. Kind of like last week, it looks like running back is a pay-up spot again this week.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know. I am going to say I don't want to play Kamara. I just am going to stand by it. The Browns do not give up production through the air to running backs. They are first against running backs in receptions allowed as far as fewest. No receiving touchdowns allowed to running backs. They have a good defense. This is a game the Browns can win too. So I'm just going to go away from Kamara since right now he's the second highest owned running back. I think Devon Achane is better chalk at 7.2K in a matchup with the Raiders. He's coming at 31% owned. Obviously, you can consider getting away from that because of the ownership, but based off of projection and matchup and price, I think he looks awesome. I like him. To me, that's good chalk. So I'm probably going to go Achane McCaffrey. But like you said, Bijan, Kyron, Kenneth Walker, Breece, JT, all those guys are really, really good, have high upside. It's arguable. Some of them have okay matchups. Some of them have really good matchups. But for me, if I had to pick two guys at running back, it's going to be McCaffrey and Achane this week. What about value here? I mean, you did say this is a position to pay it for once again, but is there anybody kind of sneaky here below 6K that we can save money with?
Below 6K? No. Like Alexander Madison or Audric Esteem or whatever, but
I mean, Esteem, if he's got that, if that's his role,
maybe
I'm okay with that.
It's okay. I mean, he's 4.5, so you're not, it's not a huge risk necessarily. But
no.
I don't know. There's a lot of opportunity cost. Like, you're missing out on Kamara, McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, Breece Hall. I love both of the Lions running backs this week. David Montgomery for 6.5 looks like a pretty good value. Wouldn't play them together, but I will be getting to a lot of those Lions running backs individually. Ramondre, I think, is fine. I think he's kind of the cheapest one that I'm semi-building around for 6,100 against the Rams. I think that's a pretty good play. Kenneth Walker, I don't mind against San Francisco. They've been kind of weak against the run this season. Walker didn't do much last time they played, but I don't think that's a bad play at what should be pretty low ownership, especially if you're going to play some Niners on the other side. Then Walker is a pretty good run back.
I love the Walker call. Only 7K flat. He's a major discount compared to everybody else, and a really nice pivot off of HN if you don't want to eat that chalk. Not even 10% owned at the moment. And like you said, 49ers are not the daunting matchup that they once were. So moral of the story, lots to like at running back. Once again, I'm in alignment with you. We are paying up at running back for sure. Hopefully we can find enough value to open it up to get a stud wide receiver as well. So let's kick it over there. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown leading the way. With a 20-point fantasy projection. This is not the position as far as like stacking up top like we're used to, because obviously CD is in the Monday night game. AJ Brown is playing tonight. So we are definitely without some guys that we would normally flock to. And there's only one guy coming in with a projection over 20 fantasy points. So because of that even makes me double down more on the whole running back paying strategy. That said, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8K, kind of cheap for who he can be and the matchup with the Jaguars. Let's start there. Are you going after him as your top spend at wide receiver?
Doesn't look like it. Like I said, I'm paying up at running back quite a bit. The double 8K running back kind of leaves you pretty thin with funds on wide receivers. So for the most part, I'm paying down below that. The expensive receivers, God, I can't believe Devontae Adams is more expensive than Garrett Wilson. I don't really understand that, but I do
because
have
he gets like 10 plus targets every time
and doesn't do anything with them. But I'm going to play him again this week, and same with Garrett Wilson because I'm getting to Rodgers. So those are the expensive ones I like. I also like Pickens for 7K. I think he's a very strong play, even if you're not stacking him with Wilson. I think Pickens is great this week. Otherwise, I'm paying pretty far down. I'm not really getting to Amon-Ra, maybe a little bit of Puka or Tyreek Hill, but not core plays on this slate for me.
Yeah, Jefferson is facing a Titans defense that's been very, very stingy against the pass, third best against wide receivers. Obviously, Jefferson, he can blow up at any point. He can be matchup proof, but he is the most expensive wide receiver. So I'm just going to fade him. First, because I'm paying up at wide receiver. Second, because of things I just said. Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably the best spend up at 8K as far as floor and ceiling and matchup. And he just feels like a value big time compared to Jefferson, $600 cheaper. So if I'm going to pay all the way up, it's absolutely the sun god over Jettas. Drake London, I don't know if Patrick Surtain is in this week. He's like banged up like every week, it seems, but I don't want anything to do with Drake London if that is the case. I'm probably going away from the Jets passing game this week, and I love that they're getting ownership, but you don't have to like the Jets to like Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, like I think you kind of were alluding to. They just get crazy volume. Even if Devontae is washed, if he gets 13 targets and he gets half of those as catches, he's probably going to deliver on this slate. So I'm okay with them. I just don't really want to play the Jets offense this week. Boy, Cooper Kupp looks like a really nice value at 7.5K. Puka Nacua even cheaper at 7.3. Not the most amazing matchup against the Patriots, but those guys are major, major discounts. I think I'm going to lean towards who's the lower owned, and right now that's Cooper Kupp by quite a bit. And then the major flag plant for me at wide receiver, my guy that I want to spend up for the most, Tyreek Hill. He has been super quiet since Tua came back, but he's still getting a little bit of work, still getting 10-plus fantasy points in every game since Tua did return. And the matchup with the Raiders is pretty darn good. So I think this is the week Tyreek explodes. I think Miami's going to have a really, really big game. And he's coming at 10% ownership, so I'm going to be very overweight on him there.
Yep, he's underpriced for who he is, and the matchup is kind of a dream. So I'm with you.
All right, so you were also talking about getting down even cheaper as far as values go at wide receiver. Anybody else that really stands out that you feel really good about? I mean, Courtland Sutton's under 6K. He looks good. We can look at Browns guys. Obviously, if Jameis Winston's going to get some revenge against the Saints, whether if he's Cedric Tillman at 5.3K or Elijah Moore at 4.3K. Anybody else that stands out for you?
Judy at 5.4, perfectly playable too. I don't think he should be more expensive than Tillman, but that should make him pretty unowned, I would think, in a full stack. I like that quite a bit. My favorite is on the other side of the Miami game. I didn't mention Gardner Minshew as a QB play because I don't want to do it, but Myers for 5.6 with no Devontae gets volume. It's not a bad matchup against Miami. I just think he's a pretty good value with some upside and a decent floor. Courtland Sutton, I like that call quite a bit. I think DeAndre Hopkins is someone you can look to again, still under 6K. Kind of underwhelming last week, but we saw 2 weeks ago he has upside if he can get red zone targets. So hopefully he will. Other than that, it's like punting and gross stuff. I don't love this position. I think Pearsall is okay again and under 5K. Debo, if you're playing him with Purdy. Juwan Jennings, I forgot to mention 5.3, probably my favorite dollar for dollar 49er receiver. But yeah, I'm not getting to a ton of the expensive stuff. I'm pretty much paying down here this week.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think a good starting point is look at what quarterbacks you like. What quarterbacks are projecting well, who has a good matchup, who you think you want to play. It starts with Purdy for me, so I love Debo. He's probably right behind Tyreek as far as my favorite play. I think he's probably a better value than Tyreek, but I'm going to try to get them both together. Debo is coming in with not that much ownership. His projection's kind of low. Pierce Hall is a good call. Don't have a problem with Juwan Jennings either at 5.3K. 49ers passing game in general, I really, really like their entire offense, honestly. I don't mind a shot on Jameson Williams at 5.8K if you don't want to pay up for the Sun God. And then DeAndre Hopkins, a little bit cheap at 5.7K. The Bills are a beatable matchup, and he is the number one guy for them. I guess Kelsey is technically, but he looks like a value at 5.72. But yeah, I agree. I'm not paying all the way up. If I'm going to pay up, it's probably Tyreek or Cup on this slate, and then Debo. Those are the three guys I like the most if I'm going to pay at wide receiver. All right, let's kick it over to tight end. We have Travis Kelce leading the way, 6.3K, coming in with a 16-point fantasy projection. He is easily the chalk of the slate as far as spend-ups go. There's another chalky guy, but he is a value, and we'll talk about him in a second. Kelce faces the Bills on the road. It's not really the most amazing matchup, I don't think, by the numbers. Yeah, the Bills are middle of the pack. But even so, it doesn't really matter because Kelce has such a huge role right now that we can absolutely play him and not worry about ownership. He's just been a god. Brock Bowers is back from a bye. They're going to have to throw against Miami, so he is in play at 5.8K. I mean, tight end sucks this week. It sucks most weeks, I guess, but I don't know. I kind of want to either pay for Kelce because the role or punt the position. I don't really love like Evan Ingram and David Njoku. TJ Hawkinson, I guess, is a good price, but I don't really love the matchup. I don't know. What do you think about tight end?
I don't mind Njoku. Just I'm into Cleveland in general, so he fits in pretty easily. I think Mark Andrews, if Isaiah Likely's out, will look better. Even if he's in, I think Andrews is okay for 4-6 in that Cleveland-Pittsburgh game. I do like Kelce quite a bit. I think a 2 tight end build is viable, just like always. If Dalton Kincaid is out, then Dawson Knox, is he the punt you're talking about? He might be chalky.
No, but at 3.5K, he's definitely in play. He's one of my favorite punts if Kincaid is indeed out. Hunter Henry was the other one.
Right? Davis Allen, is that who you're talking about?
No, Hunter Henry at 3.9 would be the other one. But he's really chalky, so I think I'd just work away from that if I could.
I think Davis Allen for 2.5 is okay if you want to fully punt it. Yeah, it's not good out there at all. Hunter Henry, AJ Barner, it's pretty gross down there.
I gotta tell you, I like just living in the 4.5K range with Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, and Sam Laporta. One of those three guys might be where I go the more I think about it, especially if Hunter Henry is going to be chalky. And if I don't play Kelce, it's going to be Kelce or one of those guys in the 4K range, just because those guys are typically guys we can count on for 10 to 15 fantasy points, and we're not paying a premium for them whatsoever. I will note that Laporta is banged up, but the matchup with the Jaguars is really good. And then Hawkinson and Andrews are just rock solid PPR guys. Well, Andrews is more of a guy we probably need to score a touchdown in that offense, but he definitely can do that. All right, let's wrap it up with defense. Packers lead the way with the best projection going up against Chicago. I'm a little bit concerned about Green Bay just because it is a divisional game. It is on the road, and the Bears did just fire their offensive coordinator. What the hell was that? So I think the Bears offense might end up being a little bit better than people think in this game. So not really super interested in the Packers at 3.5K. I'm okay if you want to play the Lions against Mac Jones, if you want to pay up, but I normally prefer to pay down. Due to that, if I'm not playing Anthony Richardson, I'm looking at the Jets at 2.8K, even though they were terrible last week. I think the Broncos remain a really good value at 2.9K. And then we can look at the Chiefs-Bills game where you have 3.1K Chiefs and 2.7K Bills. I think they're very interesting options as well. Oh, I guess the Bears, 2.4K. That's a pretty darn good value at home against the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets look good. I think you can play the Titans against Minnesota, only 2,300. I think that's a fine punt. I don't mind Miami against the Raiders. Like I mentioned, liking Jacoby Myers, but the Raiders have a really shitty offense in general. So
true.
Miami at 3K is okay enough to me. Don't mind Buffalo. Don't mind New England. Even the Rams, they get sacks. Drake May throws interceptions. There's upside there too.
Yeah, let's not forget about the Colts. They are not a stalwart defense, but if Rodgers is as washed as he looked last week, then the Colts look like a really good play at 2.6K, 2.6K as well. All right, before we wrap it up, let's go with our major flag plants of the week and also your general approach / strategy for week 11.
Looks like my general approach will be to pay down at receiver, pay down a little at QB, and pay all the way up at running back. Favorite stack to do that is Cleveland. They're very stackable in the passing game. Then you pay up for the running backs. Double tight end, I think, is also firmly in play too for value.
Yeah, I think my big flag plant is I'm going away from Kamara again. I really like McCaffrey. Probably going to end up playing him. He could just be the direct pivot, and then you can do whatever you want in the second spot. Right now, Achane is probably the second guy I'm looking at, although Kenneth Walker is a very interesting pivot away from him when you look at ownership. But for the most part, it is Purdy at quarterback, 49ers passing game, punting defense, probably going to punt tight end, and I'm not paying up over 8K at wide receiver. That's probably the general approach there. All right. Hopefully this helps you out, helps you with your process, helps you know some plays that maybe you weren't on, or maybe it doubles you down for guys you already liked. If this helps you out in any way, give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and good luck.